Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode 215. And as you can tell, Larry is not here this week to do the standard intro, so hopefully I did it well enough. But I would like to say hello to my co-host for this week, somebody who's been on the podcast before, my good friend Rich. Rich,
Hey.
welcome to the show again.
Thanks for always having.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah. Actually,
so-
it was funny. I was saying to you, I was actually yesterday walking around and I was like, it's been a while since I've been on. And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, I get the text from you and it's like, hey, you want to do it this weekend? And I'm like, sure.
Yeah, see what happened. You put it out in the universe, and then something happened with Larry, and there you have it. Although maybe should I be concerned? Did you set this up?
We don't talk about that, okay?
It's very true. All right, well, we'll leave that alone. No, Larry, unfortunately, it was busy this weekend, so just first off, thank you very much for stepping in. It's always great talking to you. Not only here but outside of the podcast. We've become almost a pseudo Thursday night gaming crew.
Yeah. Gotta love it, man.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've been enjoying the Capcom beat 'em up bundle.
Yeah.
On PS4, and that's been great. I've played a whole bunch of games I've never played before.
What was the one we just played? Was it Armor Wars or something?
Yeah, Armor something. I don't remember what, but yeah, it was like Armored. Yeah, but we finished it, which was great.
That was one of the better ones on that, I'd have to say.
Yeah, I still think that was it Knights of the Round that was my favorite, I think.
I think that that was the one you liked the most.
Yeah, I thought that one was really cool. So yeah, I mean, it's just a really cool beat 'em up bundle. Just a whole bunch of old arcade games for the early 90s where they basically just took the same code and just reskinned it with other things.
Yep.
Which seems to happen. Well, used to happen a lot. I'm sure it still happens now.
And it just, whenever we play those, it always just makes me think about, like, to actually beat those games, how much money you would have had to plunk down into that arcade unit just to beat it.
Yeah, you know what? Next time we play, I think we only have one left that we haven't beaten on that collection. Yep. But the next time we play, we should count how many continues we use to see how much money it would have cost us to beat the game in the arcade. How many quarters?
Yeah.
Because I know I went through quite a bit.
With Armor Wars, I think I'm gonna say I probably would have spent about $5 on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that easily $5. And that was a game too where it was almost like I felt like 3 times I thought the game was over and it wasn't. So
yeah.
But and then aside from that, you and your wife Trish are now getting me into Diablo for the first time.
Oh, so you gotta love the Diablo.
Yeah, and it's been fun so far. Now, is that a game where it's like, is there just like a set story mode where there's eventually an ending, or is it kind of open where it always, like, you can just go back and always play it?
Both. There's a set story that you can follow along with.
Mm-hmm.
Trish and I, we played through it once, just her and I, because we love to just sit down and just kind of have like something, 2 players couch playing. Usually we play like the Lego games was how we first started, and then eventually you play through those and you're like looking for something else. So then we started we found out that Diablo was multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got you and Jack addicted to it. And but when Trish and I were doing it, we went through. There's like 5 acts, and the storyline is actually really kind of interesting in terms of where it goes. Like, I don't want to say anything or spoil anything for you because you're playing along with us,
right?
But it's there's a couple of really, really great plot twists along the way that you just don't expect. And then the other thing is it's just a fun button masher back to the old days, and it's then the other part of it is there's the season mode where you can actually start roaming around and doing like all these other little side missions, which I haven't figured out how to do yet for whatever reason.
Okay.
Like, I would think it's just you go into it and do that, but I think it's actually part of the main storyline. Like, you can branch off and do those side quests. So
Oh, all right. I mean, most of those games have side quest stuff that you can do, which, again, it's all about spending more time in the game. So the developers love it when you just live inside their games, you know? But yeah, so far it's been really fun. I know we haven't played it a lot yet, but you know, those types of games, like, you know, the Baldur's Gate kind of games and stuff like that, those have always been, you know, basically it's like us playing D&D without having to do the work,
Yeah,
you know, of
somebody else
creating
gets
it
to
all.
play DM.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody else is playing DM and we're just walking through it with a controller. So
Yep,
much easier.
yep.
But yeah, so Rich, I know we were talking before we started recording. We were trying to come up with you know, an interesting topic, and you know, and it's always fun when Larry and I do the same thing. It's like we start having a little bit of a discussion, and then we come up, you know, we come up with something that we, you know, that just comes out of the conversation we have. And what we want to talk about today, which I think would be interesting, and something, again, we're 215 episodes in and still trying, you know, and still managing to find different things to talk about. But replayability for games. So in other words, well, you know, just games that you go back to and play over and over again, no matter how many times you've beaten them. You know, now granted, we talked about, like, with Diablo, where we said it's like some games have this open world stuff, like even today, like, you know, games like No Man's Sky or not Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, stuff like that, which like seemingly never ends, right?
Right.
But we're talking about games that like you can actually complete, but you know, you loved it so much that you would go back and play it. So I thought we'll talk a little bit about that and why we seem to return to the same games over and over again.
Turn to the
You know,
scene of the crime.
yeah, why do we go back to the scene of the crime, even though we've already potentially completed everything there is in said game? So, so Rich, when we came up with the topic, was there a game that immediately like popped in your head and it's like, oh yeah, I know, like this is definitely like the one game I know I've replayed the most and I've beaten it over and over and over again?
You know, originally I had one, but I think I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball here, and you know, my first reaction was Metroid because, you know, the Metroid, Super Metroid especially,
Mm-hmm.
God knows, I mean, like I've beaten that. I'd probably say every 2 to 3 years I sit down with it and I replay it again.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm gonna go Tomb Raider.
The original?
Yeah,
Ooh, interesting.
yeah. I loved. I played it first on the Sega Saturn because I stupidly bought a Saturn instead of a PlayStation One back in the day.
Nice.
Um, and then what wound up happening was eventually I got my PlayStation One, and then my friend John, he had the PlayStation One, and I remember seeing the graphical differences between the Saturn version and the PS One version.
Mhm.
So of course I went back and I bought it and I beat it again on that. And then just throughout the years, I've gone back and not tank controls, but those hideous controls and all, you
Mhm.
know, and there's just something fun about it, man, that I just love.
All right.
I mean, I
And
know it is. If you take a look at both Metroid and Tomb Raider, what is it all about?
yeah,
Exploration.
yeah, so yeah, exactly. Like I remember when I bought Tomb Raider for the PlayStation and I was like in awe of just how, and again, it wasn't like an open world type of scenario, but just the 3D, you know, obviously the 3D nature of it, because back then 3D was brand new. So it's like, holy crap. I'm like, I can turn around 360 degrees and I can go in any direction that I want,
Yeah.
which was really cool. And then, but you know, of course, though, when you go back and you look at how Lara Croft shifted as she turned, there was like these little itty bitty step.
Yeah.
Um, when and I've gone back and played, I haven't gone back and played the first one. I've been working on Tomb Raider 2 since it first came out in the 90s because I told the story before on the show. I got stuck at a certain point and I never finished it. And then somebody gave me Tomb Raider 3 as like a gift. And I never even opened it because I'm the guy who won't play the next one until I beat the previous one, even though
Mm.
they're different stories. So every once in a while, I pop Tomb Raider 2 back in to see if I can make a little headway. And then I usually get stuck and stop.
Yep.
But so for the original Tomb Raider, how many times, like, you know, roughly how many times do you think you've beaten that game?
Oh God. I'm gonna have to say at least 15 to 20.
Mm.
Because actually the other thing, and I totally forgot about this until just now too, is back in the day, I also remember I bought Tomb Raider Gold. for the P
Oh yeah.
because it had the Lost levels in it.
Hmm.
And I played through that, and then I also went and I played the Lost levels in Tomb Raider Gold as well. And then also there might have been a certain mod that I might have installed on the game that I'm not going to say what it was.
Okay. Fair. Oh yeah. Hmm.
I think a lot of people installed that mod onto Tomb Raider.
Yes, I'm sure they did, and I'm sure they would have wanted to do it on the movie as well, with
Yes.
certain lead actress. But yeah, all right. Well, and that's not a short game to play 15 to 20 times. That's a major investment of time there. So
Yeah.
so I gotta say,
Although I'll tell you, every time I get so frustrated with the Coliseum.
oh yeah, that board was such a pain.
Yeah.
Hmm.
There was that one, and then there was the level right after it where you had to get the 3 lead bars and touch them to Midas's hands
Yes.
and then turn
Oh,
to gold.
I can't tell you how many times I turned into gold on that board.
Oh, I would do it on purpose. You would just jump onto it just because it would be like,
It was fun.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. You actually turned to gold, which was really cool.
mm-hmm.
But
And, going with that game, like there were so many cool wow moments. Like, the first time you go walking into in the third level, you're walking into this wide open area, and then all of a sudden you just see this giant T-Rex coming at you. And you're like, shit, and you're trying to like run away from it and shoot at it at the same time. Or, I remember the first time you got to the boss and it was like that big giant thing.
yep.
And you were just like, you're on this itty bitty platform that's open on 3 sides, and you're just like, oh my God, how am I going to fight this thing?
Yeah. And the T-Rex thing was always like something that always threw me for a loop, because it's like I get it that we're raiding a tomb. I'm like, but a living T-Rex is down here. Okay, sure. I buy that. But then again, they also had raptors and bears and all kinds of stuff going on.
And mummies, can't forget the mummies.
Don't forget the mummies. Yep. And again, it was just one of those things where it was just kind of cool. Like, I liked how back then, or maybe, I don't know if video games do this in general, where they don't really explain all of that away. It's
Right.
like, no, it's just there. And again, it was like the perfect game to introduce 3D and what 3D can do. So, so like I said, I think that's a good choice.
And the other one too, the other thing too about it, and going with modern gaming versus, back then, if you remember, there was the secrets, and you got that little.
Oh yes, absolutely.
And there was no such thing as trophies, but there was like bragging rights.
Yeah.
Once again, like John and I, what we would do is, we would the new Tomb Raider would come out, and we would fight to see who could finish it first, and do it finding all of the secrets. So it was like, it's like, oh, I got 3 out of 3. Oh, you got 3 out of 3 on that level. You suck, man. I only got 2 out of 3, and it was like this competition between us to try to see who could do it fastest and 100% it.
Yeah, and yeah, completing a game 100% back then. I mean, you didn't really factor that in. You never really thought about that. So just yeah. And to your point, it's like there were guides and stuff you can get, but it's not like there was no internet that really. Internet was like barely. It was just a baby back then. So there were no sites to go to look it all up and everything like that. It was basically either you bought a magazine, or like a GamePro or an EGM or something like that, or you just figured it out on your own. So,
although I'm gonna go back and go. Do you remember what IGN was originally called before it became IGN?
No, I don't. But if you say it, I'll know.
Sega Sages.
Sega Sages, and then remember, it was Sega Sages, and then it became Game Sages before it became IGN.
Yep.
Once because it originally started as a Sega site. Sega specific. Yeah. Oh God, that brings me back. All right, so let's move on from Tomb Raider.
Yes, what was yours?
Well, I mean, I got to go with the obvious one that everybody knows. Anybody who listens to the show knows or watches. Legend of Zelda, the original one for the NES. There was something about that game to me that was just always, and again, fairly simplistic in terms of the goal: save the princess, right? But just the top-down view. going like the screen continuation when you moved around on the board was just really cool. It felt open world. It was open world for back then because you could go anywhere on the board that you wanted to. Now, granted, certain areas on the overworld map were more difficult. So if you went there early, you got killed quickly.
It was the first sandbox game, if you really come right down to it.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, you didn't necessarily have to do the levels in any order. Granted, you needed certain items to get to certain levels or certain items to beat the boss in certain levels. But but if you found like if the first level you found was like level 8, and which you can do, like you know, in that game, if you buy a candle, you can find level 8 immediately because you just have to burn a bush to do it. You can just jump into level 8. If you get to a certain level, you get to a certain area on the board, you can bomb a rock and go right into level 9. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. So I loved that open world aspect to it. But there was just something about that. There's still something about that game to me that's just like it has an epic nature to it where it's like you're fighting all these enemies and collecting all these pieces from these different dungeons to save the princess. And I don't know. I mean, just the overall, like, I guess the mythology of the world as it's developed over time, not just with the first Zelda, but obviously with all the other ones that have come out. Yeah, it just there was something, it was the first of its kind for me. And to me, it defined the whole top down open world game, like genre. So I can't even tell you how many times I've gone back and beaten that game. I've beaten it.
Here's a question I have for you.
Yeah.
First quest or second quest? Or
first? I have never completed the second quest.
Neither have I.
Yeah. And in fact, that was one of the things where I was saying, like, I talked about it for the contest Larry and I are doing, that I would go back and try the second quest because it would be like a whole new game to me because I don't know where anything is in it. So, and thank you for reminding me of that I have to go back and do that.
You're welcome.
But yeah, so Zelda's definitely the one at the, got to be the top of my list. And like I said, I don't even think I can count how many times I've beaten it. I mean, if I said 30, it would be probably way low. So it's also one of those games where it's like, I can also sit down and beat it. I mean, if I'm really paying attention, I can beat it in like maybe an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. So.
You know what's another funny one is, and I've always wanted to do this, but I always struggle with trying to find the magic key in the 8th level.
Yes.
I've always wanted to go early on into the 8th level, grab the magic key and see if it works in other dungeons.
Well, the cool thing about the magic, not necessarily the magic key, but if you go into the 8th level early, I think you can get the book fairly easily. Because I remember if you go into level 8 and you just go to the left several screens, I think right there it leads you to the book. And what the book does is it allows you, when you finally get the magic wand, it lets it set fire on the end after you shoot it. So yeah, I remember, I'm pretty sure I remember getting the book. And you can get the lion key early on if you want to.
Yeah.
You just have to, avoid basically everything.
In the 8th level.
Yeah, it basically. Oh, and you might need a couple of items from the other levels. So
right.
But yeah, no, I agree with you. Like that's one of the most helpful things. And isn't it convenient that they give it to you on the second to last board? So the rest of the game's not easy. Of course. Yeah. But yeah, so Zelda's definitely my first one. What else do you have? Like what's your next one?
I mean, I have to go. Okay, so once again, I'm trying to avoid my obvious answer. I'm trying to avoid the clear-cut Metroid, which, like I said, for me, I mean, I've played all of them to this point. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to stay in the PS1, and I'm going to go with the other really popular PS1 game. Actually, there's 2 of them I could go with, but I'm going to pick Resident Evil, the first one.
Really? Replayed?
Yeah. Would you count? Okay, so here's the thing. Would you count the original Resident Evil and remember the remake for the GameCube?
Yep.
Would you count them as 2 separate games, or would you count that as one?
I think I would count them as the same because they didn't really change anything in the GameCube one. It was just they updated the graphics.
Yeah, and they updated the graphics, right?
Yeah, so I would say they were fundamentally the same.
So between the 2 of those, I would have to say I've probably beaten the original Resident Evil, the first one. Probably, I would have to say 10 to 15 times.
Wow. You
Yeah.
picked the long games to replay. I'm impressed.
Yeah. No, and I got to tell you, man, like, because, well, the first one, once again, you played through it the first time, and then what was it? I think you had to beat it within a certain time limit to get the rocket launcher.
Yes. Yeah, I forgot how long it needed to
I
be.
forget if it was 2 or 3 hours, but
Hmm.
of course, it's like you have to get the rocket launcher, and you got to experience what playing the game through with the rocket
Yep.
launcher is like. So, and it took me a couple of tries to really kind of get that down so that this way I only would have to get those certain things. I mean, God knows I couldn't do it now, but back then, back in the day, that was my thing was I wanted to get that rocket launcher, and I remember I got it, and then I never beat it with the rocket launcher.
So you did all that work and and then never capitalized on it.
Bragging rights.
Yeah,
But
that's
then,
fair.
the GameCube game, the GameCube version of it came out, and I remember beating that a couple of times on that. And then once again, I bought it when the PS4 came out. I bought it on the PS4, and you had to play it as both Chris, and then you played it as Jill, and
Right. Yeah,
so
you played it as Chris and Jill, and the stories were slightly different,
yeah.
and a little more challenging as Chris because you had Jill got two extra slots to
Yep.
carry stuff,
And
um,
Jill had the lockpick.
and she had the lockpick, which was also very helpful. Yeah, Chris needed to find ways to get through the doors or open the doors, so
All
that
those
was
stupid little keys.
the little keys. Yeah, I never enjoyed playing as Chris for that reason. I was like, you know what, Jill makes things a lot easier. I like Jill.
Yep.
Yeah. But all right, cool. Resident. Yeah, I mean, I can see why the first Resident Evil would be the one to go back to. Because again, there was something about that original one, man. I remember the jump scares that would get me because
Oh God.
I would play that in my room with the lights off, and I'm like, okay, it's like a real horror movie, which was really cool.
So do you remember when there was one point where you had to go out and fight the plant
Hmm.
in like the botany area?
Yep.
And there was the giant spiders that you encountered first.
Yes.
So it was funny when I first walked into that area. I vividly remember this because I saw something moving on the ceiling, and for whatever stupid reason, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. They've got ceiling fans, and then it fell on me, and I screamed like you couldn't imagine. I remember literally like, ah! And then all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm like, I go pick up the control and I'm trying to kill the thing, but I just remember being scared beyond
Mhm.
belief by that thing.
That was me with the dog through the window in the beginning of the game.
Oh man, yeah,
I literally jumped. Like I remember because I was sitting on my bed playing it, and I literally jumped.
yep,
I was like, holy hell.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, okay. So Resident Evil's a good one. I was trying to think of I was trying to think of something that was not Zelda. But and it also makes me think of like weird games that I go back and replay that are not necessarily good games. So, like a perfect example, like like my video game collection is actually right here. My retro game collection. I have a nice big, shelf unit here that just has all of my games. And I'm staring at my NES games, and what's the one that pops out? Jaws
Really?
for NES. I have beaten that game so many times, and I don't know why. Like it's one of those. Like, there's something like I know everybody hates that game. Everybody's like, "Oh, this game, it's not a good game," and everything like that. For me, I don't know why. I just loved going back and playing it. First off, it's based off of the worst Jaws movie, right? It's based off the fourth one, in the Bahamas
Yep.
or wherever it was. And second off, it's like you're fighting jellyfish and stingrays and the shark, and it's very
And from what I
it's
remember,
very repetitive.
I was going to say it's very grindy, if I remember.
It's very grindy. It's very grindy. But there was something, I don't know why, there's something about it that I enjoy. I have an affection towards movie-based games anyway, in general. Like I'm literally looking at my collection. Jaws, I see Karate Kid in there, Back to the Future, which was a terrible game, but another game I've beaten so many times.
You beat it?
Oh, so many times.
I don't think I ever got past the first level.
Yeah, see, I've beaten that game over and over again. There's just something about there. Maybe it was on Nintendo, in my childhood and everything like that. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, like all of those like movie-based games.
Yep.
I always go back and replay them because I don't know. I mean, they remind me of the film franchises in some way, even though majority of them are not very good. Oh, the Karate Kid one I have there too.
Yeah.
But a majority, yeah, I mean, a majority of them, they're not good games. So it's kind of sad that when I go back to like say, oh, what NES games do I want to replay? Those are some of the ones that I grab. Although I will say the Nightmare on Elm Street one I thought was actually really good.
Mm-hmm.
That was me. It was also 4-player, which is cool too.
The other thing was, and I was going to say to that is, I know a lot of it got a lot of flack back in the day, and even more recently. But I don't know. I remember playing it and just kind of having a fun time with it. And like you said, especially you grabbed 4 people and you sat down and you played it, and it was like this crazy fun, just little adventure.
Yeah, and there weren't a ton of 4-player games like that, you know? So, and not only that, I mean, granted, when you had 4 people playing that game, there wasn't enough. Yeah, there was just chaos. There wasn't enough room on the screen for 4 people in that game. But it was just a fun thing to do. So, so some movie-based games that I go back to for sure.
So, going with another part of the conversation that we had before this, I'm going to pose something to you based off of what we were talking about.
Okay.
We were talking about, the originals versus remakes. And, one of the things, and I was thinking about this because I saw somebody had done this. And obviously I've seen and played, the Not Another Metroid 2 remake versus the Samus Returns for the DS.
Mm-hmm.
Would you like to see a remake of the original Zelda done in the 16-bit style?
Oh yeah, I would love to do that. That's kind of like what they did with Link's Awakening on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of gave it that Link to the Past kind of 16-bit look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I would have no problem with that at all. I think it would actually be fun. I thought you were going to say, would I want to see it in a 3D version like Ocarina of Time? To which my answer would also be yes, because I would be very curious to see how to how to experience that world in a different way, because it would feel like a whole new game.
My only thing with that is I would be so afraid that it would be so different that I don't know if I would enjoy it. Like switching it to that 3D.
Yeah.
Like it would be cool in the sense of it's like, here's this, like you said, this 3D kind of Breath of the Wild type of thing, and keeping the map exactly the same. Mm-hmm. And there would be that novelty of kind of running around and seeing all of these things. But I wonder if is my nostalgia for it enough to get me to keep kind of playing it in that 3D world, or would it be so different that I would reject it?
Well, I think it depends. It depends on how you view games. You know what I mean? Like I'm always like, if you want to compare it to like a film franchise, like when they remake a movie, generally I don't really like the fact that they remake so many movies, because they're almost never better than the original, right?
Right.
But as I've recently, or not recently, but as I've seen in video games, like because of the advancements of technology and all that stuff, it's cool to see like what you can do with an old video game today. Like it's like look how much more we can do with it. Look how much nicer we can make it look. Perfect example. I just finished the Final Fantasy VII remake on PS4.
How long did that take?
About 42 hours. So yeah, it's a healthy game. And the game doesn't encompass everything the original did. Now the original one was 4 discs or three or 4 discs. I think it was 3 discs. It was 3 discs and it was about 60 hours of gameplay, right?
Wow.
Now the remake only covers pretty much most of what was on disc 1. So it's only part of the game, and it was over 40 hours of play. So they definitely expanded on the world a lot. That's why they called it a remake, because it's not exactly the same story.
Right.
But I got to say, like just playing through it, I'm like playing through these characters originally on the PlayStation 1, where they were literally, polygons, circles, and, just polygons and all sharp edges and stuff like that. But now playing them on a PS4, where they look, fully human and all that stuff. But yeah, all rendered out and everything like that. Stunning. Absolutely stunning. So it's like, I would feel that way about Legend of Zelda the same way, where it's like, if I got to see that like that, I'd be all in. No question. No question.
No, because what's funny is, once again, about another Metroid 2 remake, right? The guy who
Yes.
basically made his little love child and remade it. You know, going and playing that was kind of interesting. And then playing the Metroid 2 Samus Returns
Hmm.
for the 3DS. For me, what's funny is graphically, obviously, the actual Nintendo remake was way more beautiful. But between the two, I always prefer actually the one that was more in vein of Super Metroid, where it was more like that 16-bit graphics.
Hmm.
And there was just like for me, there was just something about it where it really felt like that old style. And I think that's one of the things that really kind of attracted me to it rather than the Metroid 2. I mean, the Samus Returns one,
Hmm.
which once again played through it, beat it. I enjoyed it. I just I had more fun with the other one.
Right. Well, yeah, you know what it is too. I mean, it's also part of it's nostalgia for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like you like that older version because that's what you remember, most fondly.
no,
So, and I get that. I totally get that. It's like because when people ask me, it's like, okay, what is your favorite Zelda game of all time? It's like generally I go for the, either, it's either the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, or the N64 versions. I don't usually pick out any of the newer ones.
right.
Although Breath of the Wild to me was like absolutely amazing. I'm like, but what are the ones that I look back on most fondly? The ones from when I was a kid.
Right.
So yeah, totally get that. Totally get that. But what was I going to do? Oh, I was going to circle back to other games you replay, but you don't know why. Like, are there any games that you play over and over again, even though you haven't beaten them? Like we've talked about games that we've beaten.
Right,
What
right.
about What about games you still enjoy playing, even though you've never beaten it, but you still go back to replay it?
So I'm gonna kind of cheat on one
Okay,
because I technically have beaten it, but I haven't beaten it myself.
you needed help.
So, well, so okay, so you remember the Shadow of the Colossus?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I was very happy I beat that.
so I've never beaten that myself, beating all 16 of the Colossi.
Okay.
So what I did was, for gaming night, way back when, way back in the day, because I'm talking about the original PS2 version of this game. Um, buddy of mine, what we would do is we would alternate the Colossi. So it's like I
Ah.
had all the odd number ones, he had all the even number ones, and basically we would just go back and forth. And technically, I never beat it because especially he fought the last Colossi, not
Yep.
me. And I can't tell you how many times I generally get to roughly about the 10th Colossi, and then I just never go back and I never, finish it on my own. Like I can get through the first 10, but then I never go and I never finish.
Uh,
The rest of I think there was 16 of them. I never finished
there
the next.
there are 16, yeah. But I never played it on the PS2. I bought the PS4 version. Absolutely fell in love with it, and I did beat all 16. Yeah, I mean they're a bear. They really are. Like you get to certain ones where it's like it feels like it's impossible to figure out what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then what's funny about it is that especially on the PS4 one, it's like after you beat them all, then you go back and there are time challenges to beat each one. But now that you know how to beat them, you can beat the time challenges. So perfect example, like the last Colossus in the game took
Right.
me over an hour to beat.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went back, the time challenge was to do it in under 10 minutes.
What?
Yep. And I did it in, I think, 9.
Wow.
Because once you know what you're supposed to do, like most of the time is literally figuring out what am I supposed to do? And then you figure out one thing, but then it takes you a while to figure out the second thing you have to do, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So, which is why it takes so long. But then once you know all the steps, it's like, oh yeah, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I highly recommend you go back and finish it though. But even still, you just go back and replay it, even though you never get any further.
Right.
Yeah, which is
I
cool.
I can't tell you how many times I've probably beaten those first 10 Colossi. Because then you know how it is. It's like it's like, all right, I'm
Mhm.
not going to start from 10. Like I haven't played it in a year and a half. And it's like, I'm not going to start
Yeah.
up with number 10. I want to go back from 1 and just kind of
Yep.
work my way again.
Start at the beginning, work your way through.
Yep.
Nope, totally get that. No, there are certain games that you just want to do that with because you've enjoyed the ride even though you haven't completed it.
Yep.
You
Which,
know?
by the way, it's really funny that I keep going with games that have been remade again.
Yeah, you really do. We're crossing topics, which is nice.
Which,
Nothing,
by the way, I don't know if does that say something about us or does that say something about the industry?
probably a little bit of both.
Yeah, probably.
I just don't know what it says about us.
Yeah.
Are we gluttons for punishment, or I don't know.
Here's our money.
Yeah, I was gonna say an example I can give, and I already brought it up earlier, was Tomb Raider 2.
Mhm.
I still go back, I still play it, even though I haven't beaten it. I don't know why I keep getting stuck in that specific game, but I keep trying. I keep trying. I mean, again, I love the mechanics of it and all that stuff. I will go back until I eventually beat it, but I will, yeah. But the Tomb Raider 2, and eventually one day I'll see Tomb Raider 3.
Now, do you remember which area you got stuck on?
No, I don't now. Like, because the area I got stuck on, I got past, and then I got
Right.
stuck somewhere else. So,
Well, the one thing I do remember is that 2. I remember the level of difficulty in 2 was like really ramped up from 1.
yeah. Yeah, but even with that, like normally I can figure those things out. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't figured that one out. But yeah, so Tomb Raider 2 is definitely on that list. I'm trying to think of other games I've gone back and replayed, even though I still haven't beaten them. Do you have one?
You know what's one that I've gone back and I've tried to keep replaying and I just never get very far is Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Any idea why you don't get that far? Do you just
I
lose
don't like
interest, or do you?
the interface. The interface kills.
Oh, yeah.
I hate like I love the game. I love Star Wars. I love the world. And I really feel like BioWare nailed it with Mass Effect.
Okay.
And I feel like, but like this was them figuring out how to do Mass Effect. And
Mhm.
with Knights of the Old Republic, like I just hated the fact where it's like, all right, go attack this person. And then I sit there and it's like, and I'm watching them here's the person. I'm watching them like pew, 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 pew. And I'm like, you're standing right in front of them, freaking shoot them. And it's like I just get frustrated. I'm
Well,
like,
no, but that's a typical Star Wars. Like, it's like being in the Star Wars movies where stormtroopers can't aim for anything.
but
So
I'm not a stormtrooper.
yeah, but you're still in that world, so you shouldn't be able to hit anything by
Fair.
their rules, right?
Yep. But no, I would say I'd probably like that's a game I really like. I've only ever heard such good things about that game,
Mm-hmm.
and I really, really want to get through it. I every time I go in, I just get frustrated with the layout of it, and I'm like, nope, done, boom.
Yeah. The Star Wars one I haven't gotten through that I've gone back and played several times was Shadow of the Empire on N64.
I think I only ever played the Hoth levels.
Okay. I don't remember I'll be honest with you. I don't even remember what I played on them, but I just remember trying to get through that several times and not doing it. But I just remember how fun of a game it was.
Mm-hmm.
It was just super fun.
I never had an N64, so for me, I was always like,
yeah, there were a few games on N64 that I did that with. That was one. I remember there was a Mission Impossible game that I tried that I would play over and over again, and I would always get stuck in the same part or lose at the same part.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, and to be honest with you, that I don't think that was that great of a game, but for some reason I loved going back to it. Who knows?
One thing I will tell you, man, I always loved on like I never had the N64 and I never really played any of the games like single player or what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But there were just so many great multiplayer games on that.
Oh yeah, I mean it was made for 4 players. I mean that system was. I mean, and we could go in. Yeah, we could go into replayability with like sports games and card games, stuff like that. I just thought we would skip those because those are obvious. Right. I was thinking more along the lines of like in the single player world, what are the ones you replay? But to your point, yeah, N64 was really all about multiplayer. It really was.
Although it was one that my friends and I used to love to play. I think it was done by Rare as well. Was Jet Force Gemini.
Oh, that was a good game.
Yeah, we had so much fun just slaughtering each other in that game.
Well, I mean, look, who else would you kill besides your friends in a video game? I mean,
exactly.
It's just all part of the fun.
Yep.
But yeah, just so many. There are so many. Like I know I'm not thinking of all of the ones. Like a lot of music-based games, I go back and play a lot because I don't know what it is. There's something appealing or catchy to music-based games for me. So like Space Channel 5 on Sega Dreamcast.
Oh my God.
I've beaten that game so many times.
Chew, chew, chew.
Chew, chew, chew. I've never played the second one, but I have it. I ordered a copy from Limited Run Games. They're doing like a special anniversary Space
Mhm.
Channel 5, so I should be getting that one day. But yeah, Space Channel 5 was one. There was a game on PlayStation called Bust a Groove that I would play over and over
Oh, I
again.
remember Bust a Groove.
My sister loved that game too, so we would play it all the time. And
I don't know.
again, no big story modes or anything like that. Just like it's like a dance off. That's all that it
Right.
is. But it was fun.
Going back, this really was more this game. This was a game that really didn't have a story mode or anything, but it had a pyramid in it, and like you had to beat all the way up to the top. Crazy Taxi 2 had a pyramid
Oh,
mode where like you had challenges that you had to beat all the way up.
I didn't know that.
And on the Dreamcast, and I remember like I never was able to beat that one single one at the top of the pyramid. And I've tried so many times trying to do it and just never ever was able to do that challenge. I think it was something like you had to drop off like 50 passengers in like 10 minutes or something like that.
Oh, wow.
It was something ridiculous. I don't remember what it was now, but I just remember like trying endlessly to do that and just failing epically.
Yeah, Crazy Taxi was actually one of the Dreamcast games I never wound up buying.
Really?
I know, and it's like one of the most popular games on that console.
Mm-hmm.
Sonic Adventure, though, on Dreamcast, I've played that a few times. I think I've only beaten it once, but I've gone back to play it just because.
Never beaten it.
Oh my god, it's such a good game when you get to the end. I mean, really is. But it's just fun, just
Mm-hmm.
overall fun. Oh, I just thought of a good one. We haven't really. And maybe we'll wrap up with this topic or genre. Comic based video games that you've gone back and replayed. Now I know for a fact
Ooh.
Super Nintendo Adventures of Batman and Robin, based off of the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I've played that game so many times and only beaten it once. I actually did a live stream of actually beating it because I would always get stuck on the Riddler's maze. Like I would solve it, but then I would always die fighting whatever the boss was on that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or if I did get past it, I would die very quickly after that. But I remember I can go back and play that game any day of the week. Love that game.
I'm gonna go with one that you and I played a couple of years ago together, and beat it. I only beat it for the first time when we did it that time. X-Men on the Genesis.
The first one.
Yeah.
Yes, that one was hard. It really
Yeah.
was. There was I remember it took me a very long time to beat that game.
That was an insane game, and that whole reset the computer was you actually had to press reset was like you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. I remember the first time I got to that when I was, when I had the game when it first came out, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I just left the game on until I could find out how to do something with it. And then it like, froze or shut off or something. And I'm like, oh, I was like, that's great. But never in my mind did I think press the reset button.
Yeah.
Never even thought. And I mean, granted, a little annoying, but kind of brilliant when you think about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, wow, who would have thought like I got to reset, like hit the reset button to actually get to the next level of a game.
For me, I remember just endlessly getting to that point and just like going and like jumping around. I think I was always Gambit for whatever reason when I got to that point, and because it was in Mojo's world, and
Yep.
I remember like just jumping around. I'm like, what the hell? Like, why can I not figure this out? And then eventually one day, like I remember sitting there because you had like the time limit just kind of like going down, and I was just like, the only thing I could think of is I've never hit the reset button, and I'm like, well, I'm about to die anyway, so reset. And then all of a sudden, I saw the binary code go across, and I'm like, what the hell is this? And then all of a sudden it reboots, and next thing you know, the game continues, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yep.
And you're like, there's no way this is what this is.
And that's exactly what it was.
Yep.
And I got to say, it was. I thought it was again looking back on it now, really smart. Back when I didn't know what to do, really annoying. Um,
Pre-internet days.
exactly. But yeah, like I mean, comic book games I've gone back to so many times. Maximum Carnage on Super Nintendo, I've played so many times.
I never liked it.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I did not like it.
It was just a side-scrolling beat 'em up. I mean, there was
I
nothing
know.
to it.
I don't know. I just, there was something about it that I just could never ever get into
Oh
with
wow.
that one.
I assume that would be the same for Separation Anxiety, which was basically the same thing.
Yep.
All right.
Um,
Well,
Going back to the Genesis, I loved the original Spider-Man.
oh yeah, I have that in my collection. I'm looking at it right now.
Although ironically, I was never ever able to save Mary Jane.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I definitely never beat that. I've definitely never beaten that. And
Back in
then
the day, but
yeah.
I could beat the Kingpin no problem.
Mhm.
I could never find, because you had to find the keys to save Mary Jane, and I could never find where the keys were.
Oh, it sucks. Have you ever gone back and you've never gone back to try?
I mean, I went back probably a couple of years ago and tried,
Hmm.
but once again, that's one of those like that's a game that my 16-year-old or 15-year-old self had the dexterity in my fingers to play that game.
Yep.
That's gone now at this point.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. That's the other thing as you get older, right? It's like I can't do these things anymore.
No.
Spider-Man and the X-Men was one I used to rent from the video store all the time until I bought it. I was never able to beat it though. I would beat the first level as Spider-Man,
Yep.
and then after that, like everybody had an individual level. I remember getting through Wolverine's board, and that's it. I always died as Storm. She would drown every time I played. Always died as Cyclops, and I think that who was the other? Was it Nightcrawler? The fourth one? I forgot who the fourth one was because there were four
I
X-Men and
want to say it was
Spider-Man.
Nightcrawler.
Yeah, never got through his either. The only one I ever got through was Wolverine's board,
Now that
and
was
then
Nintendo, right?
that was I was on Super Nintendo and Genesis, I believe.
It was Super Nintendo.
Hmm. Yeah, it was Super Nintendo. No, Nintendo had that god awful X-Men game, Uncanny
Yes.
X-Men. Yes.
I think that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, no. This was Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge. You get sent to Murder World.
Mhm.
So and again, murder like that was one of my favorite storylines in the Spider-Man comics when I was a kid. There was something about like, hey, look, an amusement park that kills you. I just enjoyed it. But yeah, there were there were so many, there are so many like more current ones, like X-Men Legends is worth going back and replaying. Super
The
fun.
original Spider-Man on the Dreamcast / PlayStation 1.
Oh God, that game's fantastic.
That was amazing.
Hmm.
And I loved all the different costumes and how they gave you the different powers. Like I remember when you unlocked the symbiote's costume, like the big thing behind that was you had unlimited webbing.
Yes.
Which was like insane at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the Spider-Man game on PS4 and that a lot of what they took that you get in there, like they've taken from that original one on PlayStation. Yeah, I remember that. That was like one of the most loaded up games I remember back then. It's like, oh my God, I've never I can unlock so much stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, so clearly we love to go back and replay stuff versus playing new things, I guess.
Yeah.
Although I'd say probably for me now it's more of a 60-40. I do like to play new stuff more now. Or when I say new stuff, I mean games I've never played.
Yep.
But still, it's always cool to go back and it's always cool to just go back and replay some stuff. And there's like a comfort level. There's a comfort thing to it where it's like, it's just like curling up under a blanket on a cold day, and it just makes you feel nice and warm inside. It's like,
well, going with something that I was talking to you, Jack, and one of my other friends, John, about. I'm like, what year is it that we're in right now? Because the 3 games that I've currently been playing is I'm playing the new God of War.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is phenomenal and is amazing. I mean, granted, it's old now at this point, but I'm playing it for the first time finally. But the 2 other games, Tony Hawk 1 and 2.
Yep.
And Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racer.
Yeah. See, I mean, there's nothing wrong with going backwards. No. Nothing wrong. I mean, I'm playing Tony Hawk 1 and 2, the new one, like on PS4. I just finished the Final Fantasy VII remake. And then I'm trying to think of what else. I finished Miles Morales on PS5. But outside of that, it's like I'm looking at older stuff. Like recently, like I beat Dragon's Lair for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yep, because I have it on PS4. Dragon's Lair, and I started Dragon's Lair 2, but I didn't finish it, so I got to go back and do that one. But yeah, I mean, like that's the whole point. It's like just because you like to go back to old games doesn't mean they aren't any less enjoyable than current ones. If anything, for us, they're more enjoyable because of the nostalgia factor.
By the way, another really long game that I've replayed and beaten, not as many times. I probably have done this about 4 or 5 times. The first Dragon Warrior.
You know, I've never played Dragon Warrior.
Really?
No. I can tell you that I own 2 copies of it, though.
Really?
Yeah, I have 2 copies of it. I'm looking right at them, but I've never played it.
I really enjoyed that one. I mean, that was a grind fest. I mean, you had to sit there and grind to level up.
Mm-hmm.
But man, that was one, and I still remember when you fought the Dragon Lord at the end. Whoo! I was scared shitless, like trying to get through that. That was scary.
Yeah, especially when you do all that work. Like when you do all that work and get there, and it's like, oh crap! If I don't beat it, I'm screwed. Yep, totally get that. But yeah, so I mean, this was I love taking these trips down memory lane with our topics. I really do. And I don't know, like for anybody who watches or listens, it's like, you know, let us know. It's like, what are some of the games that you go back and replay, whether you've beaten them or not, and why do you go back and play them? You know, obviously because you enjoy them, but is there some type of attachment you have to that specific one that you go back and replay? You know, I have to commend you, Rich, that I'll commend both of us actually, that neither of us talked about Super Mario.
Yeah.
Because that would be the obvious answer. So, but what? 3, of course. 3. Of course.
Well, 2 was always fun. Like I know 2 gets a bad rap.
Yeah, but 2 yeah. It was fun in its own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so yeah, just let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys. And I think that's gonna do it for this week's episode, Rich. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me and filling in for Larry. Always happy to have you on the show. And always happy to game with you as well.
There you go.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we got to get a Tony Hawk 2 thing going.
Oh, yes, we do. Prepare to be, well, no, I'll prepare to be destroyed. I haven't been playing much. So, but then for those of you guys who listen or watch, you can catch the Retro Gamers podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. If you want to watch us, you can watch us on YouTube and Instagram TV. If you want to hit us up, you can hit us up on theretrogamers.com, facebook.com/retrogamerspodcast, on Twitter at retrogamerspod, or on Instagram at retrogamerspodcast. So one more time, Rich, thank you so much for joining. And I'm sure we'll talk gaming soon. If next Thursday, actually, we probably will. And for everybody else, we will catch you right here next week on the Retro Gamers Podcast.